As I travel around making my television programs, I am constantly introduced to people who are described as successful. And most of the time, success is acquainted with money and power. But I have my doubts about that. Howard Hughes was considered to be extraordinarily successful, one of the most outstanding businessmen of the 20th century. He became a pioneer in the development of commercial aviation. Sadly, he spent the last years of his life as an eccentric recluse, suffering from an obsessive-compulsive disorder and in constant pain. Marilyn Monroe, Kurt Cobain, Ernest Hemingway, Robin Williams, they looked extraordinarily successful to other people, but apparently life was not working out for them. Obviously, you can't really describe someone as successful without addressing happiness, a sense of well-being, and the feeling that you're getting done what you want to get done. And what makes one person feel successful can make someone else miserable, even within the same profession. I thought it would be interesting for me, and for you, to travel around the world and talk to people who are considered to be successful, and see what made them feel good. Of course, if you're a masochist, it's what makes you feel bad that makes you feel good. But I am not going to address that issue. I want to talk to people with a more traditional mental set and find out what makes them think they are successful. My first visit was with Dan Hessie. Dan was born in 1953. His father was a career Army officer. Like many people in the military, his dad moved around a lot, and so did Dan. He went to first grade in Italy and finished high school in Germany. All told, he attended 10 different schools, and in the process learned an enormous amount about cultural differences. He studied government and liberal arts at Notre Dame, got an MBA from Cornell, and a master's in science from MIT. Nice thing about Dan, in spite of all that schooling, he's still very intelligent. When he finally got around to going to work, which must have thrilled his father and his father's accountant, Dan started as an intern at AT&T. When he retired, he was the CEO of Sprint. Actually, he's not retired, he's just between movies. The first time I saw Dan, he was in a commercial.
Can you believe that we can text, email, surf the internet, even update your Facebook status right from the palm of your hand?
These days, Dan has a special interest in how people define success. When I started thinking about success, I associated the idea with happiness. But Dan has a more comprehensive vision. Apparently, success can mean different things for different people.
Success can mean different things to different people. It can mean fame, fortune, power, recognition, even having a positive impact on others. Some equate success with happiness, but there are some very successful people who aren't very happy.
Dan lives in Kansas City. If you're going to talk about Middle America, Kansas City is the spot. It's right smack in the middle. Then I got very excited. Dan said we were going to visit the Royals.
Not those Royals. One of my favorite places in Kansas City, and a place that has a lot to say about success, is Kauffman Stadium, home of our Kansas City Royals.
Great grass.
Well, you know, baseball and business are both team sports, and so business leaders can learn an awful lot from baseball and from the Kansas City Royals. You know, with respect to team, there's no letter I in the word team. And if you looked at the Royals, what you noticed is when the leadership was asked about the team's success, they talked about the players. When the players talked about the team's success, they talked about the leadership. You know, the owners, the managers, the coach. Harry Truman from here in Missouri said that you'd be surprised what you can achieve in life if you don't care who gets the credit. And a lot of people forget that the Royals had 7 losing seasons. because they decided, taking the long-term view, that they were going to build this team from the ground up. They were going to use the draft, and they were going to use the farm system and really build a very strong foundation. And businesses can learn the same thing. I remember when I was at Sprint, we were the fastest growing brand in America. We were growing customers faster than anyone. We were #1 in customer satisfaction, but we were never going to be a truly great company with the network that we had. We had to tear out every nut, bolt, and screw and really go from the fastest growing to, almost like the Royals, losing attendance for a couple of years as we told customers kind of pardon our dust while we renovate the stadium, renovate the team, and then of course when you have a new network, then you can begin growing again.
Kansas City proves its baseball pride by queuing up for tickets whenever the A's are in town. In the first 2 years of its membership in the American League, the club each year drew more than 1 million fans into spacious municipal stadiums.
In 1967, Kansas City's professional baseball team, the Athletics, moved to Oakland, California. It was the first time since 1883 that Kansas City didn't have a professional baseball team, and that was unacceptable.
It was particularly unacceptable to the United States Senator Stuart Symington, who threatened to introduce legislation removing baseball's right to operate as a monopoly unless Kansas City got the right to have a new team immediately. After evaluating the situation for, 2 or 3 minutes, Major League Baseball realized that expanding to Kansas City was a great idea. Those were the good old days when our federal government could get things done.
And it all begins after 2 outs. 14 big runs and a big home front victory for Kansas City.
The right to start a new team was won by Ewing Kaufman.
On April 10th, 1973, Kaufman Stadium opened for business, and the business was exclusively baseball. In fact, it was built specifically for baseball, which was unusual during the 1970s. That was a period when stadiums were designed to be one size fits all, from baseball to football to rodeos.
A great baseball philosopher, Yogi Berra, said, "You can observe a lot by watching." And what I learned very early was just to watch good leaders and bosses and mentors, those you would climb any hill for, those you would walk through a wall for. How do they do it? John Wooden, he was probably the greatest basketball coach ever. He coached the UCLA Bruins, won 10 national championships in 12 years. And he had a statement that championships aren't all that they're cracked up to be, but the journey, that's much more than it's cracked up to be. And as I've finished kind of the first chapter of my life and have looked back on my 37 years in business and in telecom, there's a lot to be said for it. Now that I've finished that piece, if I really hadn't enjoyed the journey and built friendships, I have some money saved up, but there wouldn't be a whole lot else to show for it. I have these fantastic friendships. I've been asked what my most prized possession is, and outside of gifts I've gotten from my family, it was a book of letters from the employees of Sprint that they wrote for me when I retired from Sprint, and it's hundreds of letters, most from people that I didn't know or didn't know well personally. I might have met them once or twice in the lunchroom, or met them at an employee gathering, and it wasn't so much about, although it was mentioned, some of the successes we had in the company, some of the awards we had won, some of the other great things the company had done, but it was primarily about the journey, how much pride they had coming to work every day, how much they enjoyed coming to work every day during that 7-year period.
Many years ago, when I was filming a program about Taiwan, I visited a Buddhist monastery and began learning to meditate and to live in the moment. The other day, Dan mentioned that he was learning to live in the moment. What moment?
When I was working my 70 or 80 hours a week as, let's say, the CEO of Sprint or another company, I thought I was living in the moment. You and I could be having this conversation, and I would think I was focusing on you, because I would be taking in everything we were saying. But in the back of my mind, there would be this tape rolling of, I've got this meeting at 3 o'clock, this meeting at 4 o'clock, this is due tomorrow, I've got the shareholder meeting next week. And I was so used to it, I didn't even know it was there. But once I stopped, say, that job, And I began to have this conversation. That tape wasn't rolling anymore. And I truly was in the moment. And I realized I really wasn't living in the moment, that I was preoccupied with the future. And I'm no longer preoccupied with the future. I'm kind of enjoying where we are right now and not thinking about what's going to happen tomorrow.
If I concentrate my focus on this very moment and at the same time consider the idea of success in the immediate future, say the next 20 minutes, I get a very specific vision.
Yes?
Kansas City BBQ. From a gastronomic viewpoint, Kansas City is an epicenter for barbecue, which is different from grilling. Smells mighty good.
Sure does.
Grilling usually takes place over high heat with very little smoke. Barbecue is a slower process over lower, indirect heat, and much of the flavor comes from the smoke. Apparently, the first Europeans to attend a barbecue were Spanish explorers who saw the natives of Haiti digging a hole in the ground, filling it with burning coals, building a framework over the pit, and cooking some meat on top. These days, different parts of the U.S. favor different styles of barbecue.
Got a Z-Man, fry up.
Here in Kansas City, the sauces are tomato-based with a distinct sweetness. What are we getting, the ribs and brisket dinner? Or? And they barbecue pork, beef, chicken, and turkey.
Kansas City didn't invent barbecue, but we perfected it.
How modest of you.
That's true, it's true, and we're happy to be a part of that perfection process. But the great barbecue regions of the United States are the Carolinas, Texas, Memphis, and Kansas City. But Kansas City is really the second home to all of those other traditions. Those traditions came to Kansas City after the Civil War, when all of the freed slaves who had been cooking the barbecue all those hundreds of years brought those barbecue skills and traditions with them after they left the Deep South after the Civil War. And if you look at any barbecue joint in Kansas City, the menu of those joints will reflect the eclectic nature of our barbecue tradition here in Kansas City. That is a brisket point right here. It's smoked for 17 hours, been thoroughly seasoned before we put it into the smoker. And then it rests for a little while. We wrap it to keep all the moisture and the flavor in.
That was my favorite piece.
No.
I'll show you. I'll get you a real good one.
And they're just juicy and tender. There you go.
Thank you.
That's the taste of Kansas City right there.
Meat special online to sell.
Regular beef on white and a red bean.
So if somebody was coming in from out of town
Yeah.
and they only had one meal, what would you recommend they order?
It would be our ribs and our Z-Man sandwich. It starts with the toasted Kaiser roll, then we put a pile of slow smoked brisket, then we top it with smoked provolone cheese, then 2 crispy onion rings, a little bit of sauce, and it's got crunch, it's got creaminess, it's got tanginess, it's got the smokiness of the brisket and the cheese.
Excuse me for a second. You know, if your crew is not happy, you're going to be out of focus for the whole piece. And we've been eating and we've been grossly impolite. I'm sorry about that. See, we're still in focus.
Jeff and Joy Staney, our owners, went to a barbecue contest, a barbecue competition, and probably after about a year of cooking, they began to win some of these contests. And their enthusiasm and their commitment to barbecue kind of deepened. And they wanted to open their restaurant in a place that was convenient to them. So you notice we're in a gas station, right? You know, there were all kinds of practical, pragmatic reasons, far removed from any considerations of what kind of gimmick being in a gas station might look like to customers.
It's really great. You can eat here and get gas.
That's right. Not from the food, but from the gas pump.
I think there's this, almost stereotype of what success means, and this almost push to, whether it's, fame or power or fortune or recognition or awards or what have you, these generally accepted descriptions of success. I'd like to kind of expand, especially for young people, the way they think about success and creating a successful life and living a successful life. For me, it's about relationships. Success, family, and friends. And I've been blessed with a terrific wife, 2 great boys, great parents, 4 great sisters, terrific friends. When I was young, it was about my grades, whether the team won the championship, trophies, awards, or what have you. Then when I was young and working, it was about promotions, moving up the career ladder, and of course the money that came with it. Later though in my career, when I've been moved around quite a lot, maybe in my late 30s, I realized looking back that when I was growing up, I was really unhappy every time I moved until I met a new friend that I really liked. And so then with each move, I began to realize that friendships were important, and they made every new post special and enjoyable. He who dies with the most true friends wins. Once I, if you will, retired from my first career, first movie, and look back on it, then I realized what success were really the friendships that I have developed over my entire life and during my career, and also the memories, the memories of the journey. They really sustain you. Another favorite spot of mine in Kansas City is the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art.
What we're trying to do more and more is to make people feel comfortable and find their own reasons of being in a museum.
The museum has a great director. Only problem, I can't pronounce his last name. So I asked him to say it on camera.
So the way I pronounce it, which would be the Spanish way of pronouncing it,
Right.
so I pronounce it Julián Zugasagoitia.
Sugasagoya.
Zugasagoitia.
Sugasagoitia.
Zugasagoitia.
Get me doing this. Sugasagoi.
Zugasagoi.
Sugasagoitia. The Nelson Atkins is also well known for its extensive collection of Asian art. So tell me about the museum.
So the museum was very lucky to be founded by a civic leader, Mr. Rochelle Nelson, who was the founder also of the Kansas City Star, but came to Kansas City to really shake things up in the transition of the 19th to the 20th century. Well, the museum started from the get-go as an encyclopedic museum, and that was the times in which museums wanted to represent cultures everywhere around the world, and that way we are the recipients of amazing treasures from everywhere in the world. Native American art and American art. Here we are in the rooms of African collections, and this collection is also one that is thriving, and there's a lot of support in the city. But we're also known for photography. The Hallmark collection of photography came to us, and it is a collection that is expanding rapidly. It's a great, strong commitment from the Nelson to really highlight photography, and I think we are in the Midwest one of the greatest.
We have to stop here for a moment.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So this is a great Henri Cartier-Bresson photography of Marilyn Monroe when she's on the set of The Misfits. And it is this kind of quality that Henri Cartier-Bresson brings of seizing an undescript moment. I really love daguerreotypes, and we have a great selection of here. And in this particular vitrine, for instance, early American daguerreotypes is the first time photography is commercial and accessible. It would be expensive enough that not everybody could do it, but affordable enough that a lot of people did it. So at one point, I think it was like 2 weeks of salary worth. So you see the beautiful 1850s lady with a guitar, but the box also tells you that they're precious. It is a way of capturing early on. This is the selfie of the 19th century, really. They have a silvery quality that I love, and at the same time, imagine this is really the first time people are looking at themselves.
Those boxes are beautiful.
It tells you how treasure, it was a treasure. It was the first time you could have a memento of your family.
So Julian, what makes this museum so successful?
Well, I think what makes the museum successful today is that overall, a generation of museum directors have changed the frame mind. Before, museums were like a fridge where you would come, everything was frozen in time, frozen also the temperature. Today, it's more like an oven, and this I take a quote from a contemporary artist, that because things are happening. So what I would say also, before, museums used to be a place where the institution would teach you to appreciate art, to love art. We want people to come and discover art on their own terms.
I was a liberal arts major in college. It was interesting at AT&T that they did the most comprehensive longitudinal study ever done on the relationship between undergraduate major and success as measured by career progression or rank. And they found that the most successful undergraduate major in terms of your business career were the liberal arts. And what they attributed it to were communication skills. What Plato's Republic teaches you is that leadership is a privilege. Great leaders have to be able to, if you will, work across the aisle, manage diversity of thought and diversity of background very well. And great leaders could bring the aristocracy, the working class, or the craftsmen, the military and the soldiers all together, where 1 + 1 + 1 is equal to more than 3. And most importantly, talked about how it was incumbent on everybody to choose the very best person, the most capable and the most just, as the leader. You know, there's a saying that, you know, adversity doesn't build character, it reveals it. And I really believe that is true, that you really see the real person when times are tough. Anybody can be a good leader, can be friendly, nice, great to be around when times are good, when times are great. But when times are difficult, you see the real person. I'm very optimistic, particularly with technology. I know that you, as well as I, are interested in the quality of life as we age. And when I look at the mobile internet and what is happening in technology, there is no demographic that is going to benefit more than people that are aging, particularly living a very productive and independent life. You know, think about it. Self-driving cars, robotics and personal assistance with artificial intelligence, telemedicine. You see it now, text-to-speech and speech-to-text for people who might be hard of hearing or might not have great eyesight. Social media to stay in touch, not really be a shut-in with people of similar interests and what have you. Maybe even as a form of, if you think of crowdsourcing. I think that aging is going to be a much better experience. And it's almost like we're going to have the golden age of the golden years.
I'm counting on it. Apparently, Dan has been inspired by the idea of talking to people about success and what it means to different people. For Travels and Traditions, I'm Burt Wolf. But wait, there's more. Whenever we edit one of our programs, we always end up with more good material than we can fit in. Interviews, stories, recipes. So we decided to put them on our website, burtwolf.com. I'll be here for the next couple of days if you look.